16-year-old Arielle Thompson was walking home from school when two officers left her bleeding on the pavement. What happened next sparked a nationwide firestorm and one mother's war for justice. The Echo of Fire is a story of truth, power, and the system pushed to its knees. Watch until the end. You won't believe how far it goes. Subscribe now, like the video, and share this story. Justice doesn't whisper. It roars. 16-year-old Arielle Thompson was walking home just after 6:30 on a Thursday evening, violin case in one hand, tote bag in the other, when the flashing blue and red lights behind her pulled over with abrupt authority. The sun was beginning to dip behind Chicago's West End skyline, casting long shadows across the pavement. But what followed would leave a permanent scar on more than just the ground. Arielle was a scholarship student at Edison Magnet High School, a gifted violinist who had just led her ensemble through their first full rendition of Tchaikovsky's Serenade for Strings. That day, she'd stayed late for a study session, AP Chemistry, her toughest subject, and left the building with her hair tied up, earbuds in, mind focused on next week's exam. What she didn't know was that two officers from the 12th Precinct were cruising that block, responding to a vague report of suspicious activity involving a youth with a large bag near school property. To them, Arielle didn't look like a student. She looked like a threat. Eyewitnesses would later recall how it started, the unmarked patrol car screeching to a halt. Two uniformed men stepping out, one hand already near his holster. Arielle, startled, removed one earbud and asked, "Is there a problem?" That question would be the last full sentence she spoke before the night descended into chaos. One officer yelled at her to drop the case. She tried to explain it was a violin. Another stepped in quickly and slammed her against the side of the cruiser. She screamed. She struggled instinctively, reflexively, and that's when the batons came out. Arielle was 5'4" and weighed just under 110 pounds. She did not stand a chance. A woman across the street, Ms. Letitia Ward, who had been waiting for her bus, fumbled for her phone as the first blow landed. The phone shook in her hands, but it captured what it needed to the second baton swing connecting with the back of Arielle's skull. The way her knees buckled, the way her body crumpled to the sidewalk, like fabric soaked in rain. The footage would later loop across millions of screens. But in that moment, it was raw, shaking, real. "She's a child," someone screamed. "What the hell are you doing?" But the officers didn't stop. Not when Arielle fell. Not when blood spread across the sidewalk like ink on paper. One officer checked for a pulse. The other casually radioed dispatch. Neither offered first aid. Neither appeared remotely concerned that they had just collapsed a 16-year-old honor student onto cold concrete for nothing more than existing in the wrong skin at the wrong time. Paramedics arrived 6 minutes later. Arielle was still breathing, but barely. They lifted her gently onto a stretcher, her arms limp, her backpack discarded in a puddle of her own blood. Her violin case was snapped in two, one half still lying open with the bridge and strings tangled inside like broken bones. At Mercy General Hospital, doctors rushed her into emergency neurotrauma. The CT scan revealed a fractured skull and early signs of intracranial bleeding. Within the hour, she was placed in a medically induced coma. A single call was made to her emergency contact, her mother. Selena Thompson and her quiet, methodical world would never be the same. Back on the street. The video made its way onto TikTok, then Twitter, then Reddit. By the time Selena pulled into the hospital parking lot, just under 35 minutes after getting the call, stand. With Arielle had already been tweeted over 17,000 times. She didn't do anything. Ms. Ward said to a local reporter, tears streaking her cheeks. She was just walking home. That one sentence became the anchor point for a city's rising rage. Chicago had seen police brutality before. They'd marched, protested, called for reform. But this time felt different. This time, the victim was a teenager with a scholarship and a dream. A girl who'd never even gotten detention. A girl who played second-chair violin and taught younger kids how to read music at the community center on Saturdays. She was, in every way, the kind of child any mother would be proud of, and yet, none of it had mattered to the men in blue. By midnight, the footage had hit 1.2 million views on YouTube. In a grainy shot from a different angle, Arielle can be seen lying on her side, a growing stain beneath her head, while one officer checks his phone and the other lights a cigarette. It was chilling. It was brutal. It was unforgivable. At 3 a.m., city officials released a vague statement, "We are aware of an incident involving law enforcement and a minor. An investigation is underway." But that wasn't enough. Not this time. Not when the video was burned into the eyes of a nation. Not when people could see her small body twitching, then going still. Not when the image of blood on a sidewalk stood in for decades of fear and silence. And not when her mother, Selena Thompson, walked into that ICU room, saw her daughter connected to tubes and machines, and felt something ancient stir deep in her bones. A fire, long buried, but never extinguished. Because this wasn't just about Arielle anymore. This was about every child who had ever been treated like a suspect before being seen as a human. Every mother who had sat in a hospital chair praying for a miracle instead of celebrating a report card. Every time the words standard protocol had been used to sanitize brutality. Selena didn't cry, she didn't panic, she didn't scream, she made a plan, and from that moment on. The city of Chicago had no idea what was coming. Selena Thompson hadn't worn a uniform in over 10 years. She had traded combat boots for sensible heels, satellite feeds for spreadsheets, and the deafening roar of a war zone for the quiet buzz of a public school office copier. After retiring from the Air Force, where she served 12 years in intelligence and cyber operations, she promised herself she would never again stand in the middle of a battlefield, not the kind made of blood and chaos. Anyway, the last time she had. A mission in northern Afghanistan had gone sideways, and her closest colleague, Amira Singh, hadn't come home. Selena buried the memories alongside the medals she never hung and the security clearance she never bragged about. She became a high school assistant principal on Chicago's South Side, dedicated, composed, fiercely protective of her students, in that quiet second chapter of her life. Her only battlefield had been cafeteria fights and budget meetings. Until the night Arielle was attacked. Selena had been working late, her desk lamp the only light left on in the office. She was halfway through a discipline report when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. The nurse's voice on the other end was clinical, almost apologetic. "Ms. Thompson, your daughter Arielle has been admitted to Mercy General. She's sustained head trauma and is currently unconscious. You should come now." The clipboard in Selena's hand dropped to the floor. She didn't ask questions. She didn't cry. She moved. By the time she reached the hospital, 27 minutes later, having blown through 5 red lights and barely noticed, she had no idea that the city outside was already beginning to burn with outrage. But the second she saw her daughter lying motionless beneath layers of tubes and blinking monitors, something old and buried cracked open inside her. Arielle's once vibrant face was bruised and swollen. Her curls had been matted with dried blood. Her right arm was wrapped and splinted. Her chest rose and fell only with the help of machines. Selina stood at the foot of the hospital bed for a long time, silent, still. She'd seen soldiers like this before, young, broken, uncertain if they'd ever speak again. But this wasn't a battlefield in Kabul. This was a child in a hospital bed in Chicago. Her child. The nurse spoke again. "There's swelling in the brain. She's in a medically induced coma to reduce pressure. We're monitoring. But it's critical." Selina didn't speak. Her fists clenched. Her breath came slow and deliberate. It wasn't just the image of her daughter that broke something open, it was the why. She had trained for years to recognize enemy tactics. She knew patterns. She knew deception. She knew that the careful vagueness of the hospital's explanation wasn't born from uncertainty. It was fear, cover-up fear, institutional fear, the kind she used to see in command briefings when an operation left behind collateral damage, and someone wanted to make it disappear quietly. But this time, the collateral damage was Arielle, and someone was going to pay. Selina left the ICU with a slow, deliberate walk. She didn't make calls, not yet. She didn't send emails. She simply drove home. Entered the small brick two-flat they had called home for the last 6 years, and headed straight to her bedroom closet. At the very back, beneath an old cedar chest and a few shoeboxes of report cards and childhood drawings, sat a sealed aluminum footlocker. She hadn't opened it in a decade. Her hand hovered over the latch for a second, just long enough to acknowledge the decision she was making. Then she opened it. Inside, everything was just as she left it: field notebooks, encrypted drives, a black flash drive marked only with a red V and her old Air Force badge. But it was the tablet she removed last, powering it on and watching it flicker to life with a faint hum. It still worked, and it still had access. Military-grade systems don't forget clearance. Not when they're burned into layers of private firmware. Within the hour, Selina had tapped into archived city records. She ran the badge numbers from the press statement, the officers listed as involved in the incident, and began building profiles. And what she saw made her blood boil. Officer Marcus Haynes, 4 complaints of excessive force, 2 pending lawsuits, and an internal note from a prior supervisor suggesting tactical retraining after an altercation with a black teenager in 2020. Sergeant Ronald Deeks, 5 use-of-force incidents logged in the past 3 years, 3 of them against unarmed minors, all closed due to lack of evidence. The same pattern, over and over. And this time, they had left the wrong girl broken. Selina didn't wait. She reached out to the one person who still owed her a favor, Darius Knox, her former mission tech lead. Now a private cybersecurity and crisis strategist. The message was short. Need eyes, full sweep, unofficial, discreet. 2 hours later, he replied, "I'll call." "What's going on?" Selina's response, "They hurt my daughter by dawn." Darius was on a plane to Chicago. Selina sat in her living room, laptop open, files spreading across the floor. She hadn't slept. Her coffee was untouched. Every part of her brain was on high alert, a gear she hadn't shifted into since the war. But this time, there were no borders, no camouflage, no command chain. There was only her daughter and the people who nearly killed her. As dawn pushed through the blinds, she looked out across the street, a few houses down. A group of teenagers were already outside, laughing, headphones in, backpacks slung casually over shoulders. She stared at them, wondering how many would be stopped for looking suspicious that day. Then she turned back to her screen. Arielle's student ID photo sat open on her desktop, smiling, full of life, wearing the blue Edison high polo shirt. Selena reached out, brushed her fingers over the image, and whispered softly, "I got you, baby." Then she stood and went to war. The next morning, Selena Thompson walked into the 12th Precinct not as a grieving mother, but as a storm wrapped in quiet. Her suit was simple, charcoal gray with no frills. Her hair tied in a no-nonsense bun. The receptionist barely looked up until Selena's voice cut the air with a calm that didn't ask, it commanded. "I'm here about my daughter, Arielle Thompson." The woman behind the desk blinked, startled by the steel in her voice. Let me get someone from internal." "No. I don't want someone. I want the officer who filed the use of force report. Now." The room paused for a breath. A junior officer, barely older than a college intern, stood and disappeared behind a secured door. A few long minutes passed. Then a man in a blue uniform appeared, his nameplate catching the light, Lieutenant Blake Harmon. He was polished, practiced, and already preparing the kind of bureaucratic shield Selena knew all too well. "Ms. Thompson," he said with a smile too polite to be honest, "we're aware of the incident involving your daughter. Our officers are currently on administrative leave, and the body cam footage is being reviewed." Selena's eyes didn't blink. "What's the holdup?" "There's a process you've had over 12 hours. I've reviewed battlefield intel in the middle of active conflict zones faster than this." Harmon stiffened slightly. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset." "No, Lieutenant, you don't. But let's pretend you do. Why did your officers stop my daughter?" "We received a report of suspicious activity. From who, at what time?" "What was she doing, carrying a violin case?" Harmon faltered. "Those details are still being reviewed as part of the preliminary report." Selena cut him off. "Let me see the report." He hesitated, then reluctantly waved a junior clerk over. 5 minutes later, she had a printed copy in hand. The header already familiar. Use of force report. Subject, Arielle Thompson. Incident date, Thursday, 7:14 p.m. Selena scanned the pages like a surgeon looking at a failed operation. Within the first few lines, the holes gaped wide open. According to Officer Marcus Haynes, Arielle had resisted commands, refused to identify herself, and displayed aggressive behavior. But there was no mention of her age, no clear reason for the initial stop, no civilian witness statements, no timestamps. Even the supposed audio transcript from the body cam was redacted. She looked up. "This report is a mess. It doesn't match anything I've seen on video." Harmon's smile thinned. "As I said, the footage is being processed." Selena leaned in slightly, voice low and unshakable. "I'm going to give you one chance to do the right thing. I want full access to the footage. I want the radio logs. I want the names of the responding officers and the full chain of custody on this report. If I don't get it, if you try to bury this, you'll have more than a press scandal on your hands." There was a flicker in Harmon's eyes, something between fear and calculation. "I'll speak with legal," he said. "You do that," Selena replied. She turned and walked out, not looking back, but inside. Her blood was molten. Outside the station, the city moved with its usual rhythm. But Selena was already shifting back into operational mode. She knew what she was up against. This wasn't just rogue officers. This was a system trained to deflect, delay, and distort until the truth drowned in paperwork. She didn't waste time. Back at home, she connected her tablet to her secure server, the one only Darius Knox knew existed. Within minutes, she had access to Precinct metadata via a backdoor tool she'd written years ago, back when her job had been scanning enemy communications across fiber lines in real time. Selena pulled up the Precinct's internal access logs for Thursday night. The system pinged 3 body cam files had been marked pending review at 8:52 p.m., but something didn't line up. The metadata showed the footage had been accessed hours earlier by a Captain Grant Lattimore, well before Internal Affairs even opened a file. The videos were already being reviewed privately, off the books. She called Darius. "We've got a problem. He was in town now, set up in a rental condo with 3 laptops humming around him." "Talk to me?" "They're moving the body cam footage behind closed doors. It's not under standard review. Someone's pre-scrubbing it." Darius didn't curse often, but this time he did. That means they're trying to bury the context. Probably strip audio, slow it down, mess with clarity, or erase it completely. Selena wasn't going to let that happen. She spent the next several hours tracking digital breadcrumbs, officer ID tags, patrol car logs, timestamp inconsistencies. Every piece of data confirmed her suspicion the official version of events was being crafted, not reported. The language in the report wasn't written by the officers, it had the stilted tone of department legal. Worse, radio chatter from dispatch had gaps. 4 minutes of silence in the middle of the call timeline. Selena picked up her phone again, this time dialing a different number, Monica Bell, her old JAG colleague turned civil rights attorney. "I need a legal pretext for requesting unaltered footage," Selena said. "You think they've tampered? I know they have." Monica didn't hesitate. "Give me 48 hours. I'll file an emergency subpoena. But you need something in the public eye to put pressure on the DA." Selena already knew what that meant. By midnight, she drafted her first formal statement. It wasn't long, just 2 paragraphs. The first laid out the facts. The second ended with a simple sentence, "If the truth won't come out quietly, I'll drag it into the light myself." She posted it across her social media accounts, each one dormant since her Air Force days. Within 2 hours, the post had over 25,000 shares. Parents, students, veterans, teachers, they were all waking up. And they were angry. By sunrise, Selena had 3 new voicemails. One was from a woman whose nephew had been stopped by the same officers last year. Another was from a hospital orderly who had been working the night Arielle was brought in and overheard one of the officers joking, "At least we didn't kill her." The third was blocked, with no voice, just static. But Selena heard the message loud and clear. They wanted her to stop. She had only just begun. Selena Thompson had never planned to fight a war on her own, and by the time the Precinct stopped answering her emails and the media began regurgitating sanitized police statements, she knew she wouldn't have to. Some battles demand allies, not just support, but warriors who know how to move in shadows, how to decode silence, and how to turn truth into something that couldn't be ignored. She didn't need an army. She needed precision. She needed minds that could cut through fog. So she made 2 calls, one to Darius Knox, the other to Monica Bell. Darius arrived at her house 23 minutes after the call. He didn't knock. He never did. He stepped in like he had a decade ago, when they were stationed in Qatar, debriefing insurgent intel between drone feeds and heat signatures. He looked older now, salt at the temples, a permanent line between his brows, but he still carried the same calm intensity. The kind of man who could hack into a defense network while quoting Baldwin. He set his laptop bag down like it was a weapon. "I ran the precinct logs," he said. "Cross-checked internal camera timestamps with shift logs. There's more going on than just altered footage." Selina raised an eyebrow. "What do you have?" Darius pulled up a digital map. "There's a dark spot between 1920 and 1932. That's when Arielle was assaulted. Body cam uploads stop during that window. It's like the whole department blinked." "Or someone made it blink," Selina said, jaw tightening. Monica Bell arrived half an hour later, blazers still pressed from a courtroom she had left early. Her voice was a mix of fury and strategy. "I filed the motion for an emergency subpoena, but we need something stronger, something public. We leak it," Selina said flatly. Darius looked up. "What exactly?" "Everything." That night, in the dim light of Selina's kitchen, surrounded by open laptops and half-drunk mugs of coffee, a plan began to take shape. Not a legal one, not a PR stunt, a campaign, a resistance. They didn't need to burn the system down. They needed to expose the rot so thoroughly that the system would collapse on its own. Darius tapped into a police union server he had been monitoring for months. "Here's what they're not saying in the press," he said. "There's a list of flagged youth, black and brown students profiled under proactive patrol models. Arielle was on that list." Selina felt the floor beneath her shift. She had no record. Doesn't matter. She fit a pattern. A code. Monica stood. "This is actionable. Not just civil rights abuse. This is targeted surveillance of minors." Selina didn't hesitate. "Then we gather every name." For the next 3 days, the trio worked non-stop. Darius created a database of flagged students and mapped incidents to time, officer, and precinct. Monica filed pre-litigation notices on behalf of 5 families who had quietly come forward through social media. Selina coordinated encrypted contact through a whistleblower platform she had set up anonymously, Light Spill. It gave survivors a place to share without fear of retaliation. By Friday, they had over 69 first-hand accounts of harassment, beatings, false arrests. Most had never made it past internal review. Some had ended in silence because the victims didn't survive long enough to speak. The team knew the department wouldn't go down easily. Institutions like that don't bleed unless someone cuts deep enough to hit the bone. So they sharpened their blades. Darius built a backdoor bot that crawled through FOIA archives, matching phrases across court settlements and internal affairs complaints. That's when the pattern truly emerged. The same officers, the same language, the same accidental camera malfunctions. Monica cross-referenced it with sealed settlements from the city attorney's office. "They've paid out over $12 million in hush money in the past 5 years, she said, slamming a folder onto the table. And not one case went to trial. Selina stood at the head of the room. Then we put them on trial in public. She began assembling the video archive, footage from witnesses, photos of bruises, snapshots of torn backpacks and shattered glasses. Every piece a puzzle she was forcing the world to look at. Every image a voice for someone who had been ignored. That weekend, she recorded a video. She sat in front of a black curtain. No makeup, no prep, just her voice. "My name is Selina Thompson," she began. "I am a mother, I am a veteran, and I am not here for apologies. I'm here for the truth. 2 officers assaulted my daughter outside her school, and the department responsible has buried the evidence, erased the facts, and silenced every family who ever asked for answers. No more. This is what they've done. Then she played the footage of Arielle's beating. She didn't look away as the sound of the baton cracked, as Arielle's body hit the pavement, as someone screamed off camera. She's just a kid. The video hit the internet at exactly 9:03 Sunday morning. By noon, it had 400,000 views. By evening, it had over 2 million. The hashtag #StandWithArielle surged back to life, this time with a fury. Survivors began reaching out. A teenage boy from the East Side who'd been falsely accused of having a weapon. A mother whose autistic son had been tackled for non-compliance. A teacher who had reported an officer for threatening a student only to be placed on unpaid leave. Monica handled the legal outreach. Darius managed digital infrastructure, shielding identities and storing evidence on remote encrypted servers. Selena became the face, the fire, the voice for the voiceless. By Monday morning, the department held a press briefing. A tired-looking deputy chief read from a script, calling the footage edited, the allegations under review, and the backlash unfortunate misinformation. Selena responded in real time with a live stream. Edited, she said, holding up the original file. Here's the metadata. Time-stamped, untouched, verified by 3 experts. Her eyes narrowed into the lens. Try again. They weren't just fighting anymore. They were winning. And the department. It was starting to crack. By the time the sun rose over Chicago's skyline that Tuesday morning, the city no longer looked the same. It wasn't the buildings or the streets that had changed it, it was the air. Heavier, charged, as if something long buried had cracked open and spilled into every alley and office, every front porch and passing car, and the name on everyone's lips was Arielle Thompson. The video had leaked at exactly 3:15 in the morning. It wasn't posted to a social media platform, not yet. Instead, it came through a secure server to 3 major news outlets, a string of national civil rights organizations, and 5 influencers with a combined audience of over 20 million people. Within minutes, it spread like wildfire. The footage was raw, unfiltered, time-stamped and unedited. A direct upload from the officer's own body cameras, one from Marcus Haynes, the other from Ronald Deeks. In the video, Arielle stands on the sidewalk, her violin case in hand, school ID hanging around her neck, speaking softly. I go here. I'm just walking home. The officers shout over her. Put your hands where I can see them. She does. She doesn't run. She doesn't scream. She just stands there confused, scared, but compliant. Then the baton comes. No warning, no threat, just impact. The first hit lands across her back. She stumbles. The second crashes into her shoulder. The third and final is aimed at her head. Her scream is cut short as her skull strikes the pavement. And then, silence. One officer laughs low and cruel. Guess we got ourselves another runaway. That was all the public needed. By 7:30 a.m., protesters were already gathering outside the 12th Precinct. By 9 o'clock, 1,000 people stood shoulder to shoulder in the city plaza. By noon, traffic was shut down on Lakeshore Drive. Teachers walked out of Edison Magnet in solidarity. A mural of Arielle's face appeared overnight on the side of a local coffee shop. Eyes closed. blood dripping like music notes from her violin. The people were not just angry. They were done being polite. The mayor, Clara Mendoza, issued a statement from the podium at City Hall just before 3 in the afternoon. Her voice was measured, her tone rehearsed. "We are deeply disturbed by the footage that surfaced early this morning. The city is opening an independent review and remains committed to transparency and justice." But when pressed, she dodged the questions that mattered most. Will the officers be arrested? What about the history of misconduct? Why did it take a leaked video to get a response? She gave no real answers. The press conference ended with muted boos and tearful chants of "say her name" by evening. Nearly every major news station had picked up the story, but even they couldn't keep pace with the fury pouring from the people. The streets didn't sleep. Downtown storefronts were boarded up. Police cruisers lined intersections like barriers between the institution and the people it claimed to protect. And Selena Thompson. She watched from a quiet room, her laptop glowing in the dark. She hadn't spoken to the media. She hadn't addressed the press. She was waiting, because timing is everything in war. At exactly midnight, Selena Thompson appeared on every screen that mattered. She didn't choose a platform. She streamed from Lightspill, the encrypted server she and Darius had built, and allowed it to be mirrored by anyone with a connection. No algorithms, no monetization, no filters. Just a link and a woman ready to speak. 5 million viewers tuned in within the first 6 minutes. She sat alone, in front of a dark backdrop, her hands folded on the table in front of her. She wore no makeup. Her voice was steady. Her eyes were tired, but burning. "My name is Selena Thompson," she said softly, "and my daughter, Arielle, is lying in a hospital bed because 2 officers decided her blackness was a threat." She paused. "Let the silence do its work. You've seen the footage. You know the truth. But what you haven't seen are the lies they've told to hide it." She held up a printed document. "This is the original incident report filed by the 12th Precinct. It says my daughter resisted arrest. It says she was aggressive. But there's no mention of her age. No mention of her ID. No mention of the violin case she carried home from school. She dropped it beside her. Now here's what they didn't want you to see." And then she played the footage again. But this time, it was framed with annotations, timestamps, officer logs, audio transcripts. It was no longer a beating. It was evidence, and no one could look away. "I served this country for 12 years, she said when the footage ended. "I've led teams through hostile territory. I've decoded terror cells from satellites, and I've read the language of war. But I've never seen an enemy so determined to rewrite the truth as the one I'm facing right now. And it lives in our own police department." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. "I'm not just here for my daughter. I'm here for every mother who got a call in the night, every child who walks to school in fear, every voice they tried to silence. I am not going away, and I am not alone." Then her voice rose. "If the mayor won't act, we will. If the department won't clean itself out, we'll do it for them. I want accountability. I want reform. I want the names, the lawsuits, the hush money exposed. And I won't stop until every last lie is dragged into the light." She stared into the lens. "I'm not asking anymore. I'm demanding." Then the stream cut. Within 5 minutes. The video had been shared over 200,000 times. Within an hour, major news outlets began echoing her words. Within 3 hours, cities across the country were planning solidarity protests. The people didn't just stand with Arielle. They stood with Selena. And the seal, it wasn't broken. It was shattered. The night after Selena Thompson's midnight broadcast lit the internet on fire. Her street was quieter than usual. Too quiet. The same neighborhood that had once echoed with laughter and life now felt watchful, heavy, like the silence before a storm. Protesters still marched downtown, news vans still circled City Hall. But on Selena's quiet block, beneath the faint orange hum of a flickering street lamp, a black SUV had parked across the street and hadn't moved in over 7 hours. Selena noticed it at once. She noticed everything now. At first, she chalked it up to paranoia. Maybe she'd just had too much coffee, or not enough sleep, or both. But as she sat in her living room with the lights off, the blue glow of her laptop illuminating stacks of whistleblower emails and misconduct files, she watched the SUV's headlights flash twice, briefly, deliberately. She stood without a sound and walked to the front window, pulling the curtain back just 2 inches. Inside the SUV, a silhouette moved, watching, recording. She closed the curtain, calm but alert. Her instincts weren't just returning, they were roaring back to life. At 6:30 the next morning, she opened her front door to retrieve the newspaper and found a manila envelope resting on the welcome mat. No postage, no return address, just her name, Selena Thompson, written in thin block letters. Her blood went cold. She took it inside, sat at her dining table, and opened it carefully. Inside were exactly 3 items. The first, a photocopy of her old military personnel file. Specifically, a redacted section from over a decade ago, a moment she hadn't revisited in years. It referenced a misconduct claim from a mission in 2010, a surveillance error, a deleted hard drive, a reprimand that had been overturned but never fully erased. The second, a printed copy of an anonymous tip sent to a journalist the day before. It claimed Selena was unfit, dishonest, seeking fame. The third, a handwritten note, short and chilling. The public forgets fast. Don't make us remind them who you used to be. Selena didn't flinch. She knew what this was. Counterintelligence 101. Discredit the messenger. Undermine the cause. Shift the focus from the crime to the voice that called it out. But they'd made one mistake. They thought she was afraid of her past. She folded the documents, scanned them for digital watermarks, and slid them into a folder labeled Incoming Threats. Then she picked up her phone and called Darius. "They're watching," she said. "License plate," he asked. "Black SUV. Across the street. Partial plate 64KB. "I'm on it," he said, "by 10 o'clock. He had already traced the vehicle to a rental agency linked to a private security firm, one used in the past by the Chicago Police Department during internal leak investigations. "They're escalating," Darius said. "They're trying to rattle me," Selena replied, and she smiled, thin and cold. They should try harder. But that was only the beginning. At 11:15, Mercy General Hospital called with an urgent update about Arielle's condition. A new doctor, one Selena had never met, told her there was a revised theory about the cause of Arielle's injuries. According to their internal review, it was possible her daughter had suffered a neurological episode, possibly a seizure. That led to her fall. Selena's world tilted. "A seizure," she repeated, voice flat. "Yes," the doctor said. "It could explain the trauma if she collapsed and hit her head on the pavement." Selena's silence was so sharp it cut through the line. "There is no history of seizures," she said slowly. "Well, we don't see any definitive proof either way, so we're updating the working diagnosis until number." Selena snapped. "You're not. I want every original scan, time-stamped and intact. I want access to her full chart. And I want to speak with her primary attending. Now, when they tried to redirect her again." She ended the call and drove to the hospital in under 10 minutes. Once inside, she went straight to the ICU administrator's desk. "I'm invoking my full parental access under state law," she said. "And if you deny me, I'll have a court order in your inbox within the hour." They didn't fight her. They didn't dare. Within half an hour, she had a secure copy of Arielle's original CT scans, the intake form, and the internal logs showing who had accessed the records. What she found stunned her not because it was unexpected, but because it was so brazen. 3 days earlier, a hospital technician had logged in under a flagged administrative code and edited Arielle's file. They added the word "possible seizure episode" to the medical summary and backdated it by 12 hours. It was a coordinated falsification. Selena took the files and drove straight to Darius. He scanned them into the encrypted system and ran a verification tool. "Yep," he said, "altered. The metadata confirms it." The file was modified from inside the hospital's admin network. This wasn't a mistake. This was a plant. Monica arrived minutes later. "They're trying to shift the blame," she said. "If they can prove she had a medical condition, it gives them cover, probable cause, even sympathy. But they won't get away with it," Selena said, her voice steel. That night, Selena released a new video. It was short, just under 2 minutes, but it hit like a hammer. She stood beside Arielle's hospital bed, the machines beeping softly behind her. "My daughter was beaten by officers of the law, and now someone is trying to rewrite her medical records to cover it up. They're saying she had a seizure, that it wasn't their fault." She held up a copy of the original and altered files, both clearly labeled. "This is a lie, a calculated, criminal manipulation of evidence. And we have proof." The video reached 800,000 views in its first hour. By morning, doctors at Mercy General began resigning. The hospital issued a public apology. And the SUV across the street, it was gone. But Selena wasn't done. Not even close. Because now she knew just how far they were willing to go to silence her. And she was ready to go further. The more Selena Thompson refused to break, the more cracks began to form in the wall built to keep the truth buried. And, eventually, one of those cracks became a fault line deep, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. His name was Officer Jordan Wells. He knocked on the back door of Darius's safe house at 2:30 in the morning. Hoodie pulled low, hands trembling, eyes darting nervously like he expected to be followed. Selena had never met him before, but she knew the look. Not just fear confession, the kind that weighs heavy on the soul long after the moment has passed. Darius opened the door and scanned him with the calm precision of someone who'd lived through ambushes before. "You alone?" Jordan nodded. "I think so. Inside." He didn't speak right away. He sat on the edge of the worn-out sofa, gripping a flash drive like it was burning his fingers. Selena sat across from him, silent, watching. She knew better than to rush a man carrying this much guilt. Finally, he spoke. "I was there that night, the night they hurt your daughter." The air in the room changed. "I wasn't part of the arrest, but I heard it on the channel. I was posted 6 blocks away. When I checked in with dispatch, they told me to stay out of it, said it was under control, said Haynes has a code brown. That's what they call it when a black kid resists, even when they don't. Selena leaned forward slightly. Why now? Jordan exhaled. A hollow sound. Because I have a son. He's 12. He asked me last night what would happen if the police stopped him on his way to school. And I didn't know what to say. He held up the flash drive. This is the radio chatter from that night. I recorded it off the squad car console. Wasn't supposed to. But I did. Darius plugged the drive into his laptop. Static filled the speakers. Then voices sharp, clipped, unmistakable. Unit 23. Suspects not complying. She got a bag. Maybe a weapon. She's backing up, move in. Then Haynes's voice. Chillingly calm. We clear this block tonight. Boys, no exceptions, no headlines. A pause. Then, gotta keep the stats clean for review. Lieutenant wants those numbers tight. Selena froze. That's a quota, she whispered. Jordan nodded. They don't call it that, but it is. Unofficial. Of course. Every month, they push us to meet contact thresholds. How many stops? How many disruptions? How many removals from problem zones? And they don't say it out loud. But we know what they mean. Black and brown kids, mostly students. Monica arrived 15 minutes later, summoned by a one-line text from Selena. You need to hear this. She walked in just as Darius brought up the transcript Jordan had secretly compiled dozens of entries. All tied to the 12th Precinct, all referencing clean sweeps, quiet zones, and coded contacts. The language was vague, but the pattern was crystal clear, a racially motivated patrol strategy, masked behind vague departmental jargon and pressure from upper command. Jordan sat with his head in his hands, voice shaking. I filed a complaint last year after they slammed a 14-year-old into a patrol car for skipping school. I was pulled off field duty for 6 months. They said I needed retraining. After that, I kept my head down. But this, what they did to your daughter, I can't hold it in anymore. Selena reached across the table and put a hand on his arm. You're doing the right thing now. That matters. Over the next 2 days. Jordan became the match that lit the dry kindling others had been too afraid to touch. One by one. Stories began to rise: officers, victims, teachers, even nurses. Selena's encrypted platform Lightspill lit up like a constellation. A retired school counselor came forward with a spreadsheet of students flagged for risk by the department. Passed quietly to administrators in inner-city schools as part of a now-defunct Safe Pathways program. 97% of those students were Black or Latino. A public defender released sealed transcripts of client testimonies where police pressured teens into plea deals after minor infractions, many arrested in the same district where Arielle had been attacked. A janitor from the police station anonymously uploaded security footage showing officers joking about racking up stats during end-of-month patrols. And the floodgates fully burst when a young woman named Imani Rhodes shared her story in a video of her own. She had been 16 when officers from the 12th Precinct accused her of loitering outside a corner store, slammed her against a fence, and charged her with disorderly conduct. Her case never made it to court. She'd been too afraid to speak until now. I saw what they did to Arielle, Imani said, voice raw, and I realized they never stop until someone makes them. So this is me, not being silent anymore. Within 24 hours, Selena had received over 120 new reports, all tied to the same group of officers, the same precinct, the same broken tactics. The truth was no longer a whisper in the dark. It was a scream. Selena organized the data, mapped the stories, and compiled them into a digital file labeled Pattern of Harm. She shared it with civil rights organizations, congressional offices, and every journalist with a spine and a signal. At the same time, Monica filed a motion in federal court for a class action suit. Selena posted a single message on her channel, "They tried to erase us." But every voice they silenced is now another nail in their coffin. We're not asking for justice anymore. We're making it ourselves. Jordan Wells, now the face of a different kind of badge, gave an interview on live television 2 nights later. "I wore the uniform," he said. "But now, I wear the truth. I failed to speak up before, but I'm speaking now, and I won't stop." That night, protesters gathered outside the 12th Precinct once again, but this time, they held signs not just with Arielle's name, but with dozens of others. The people were no longer just marching for one girl. They were marching for an entire generation. By the time Selena Thompson walked into the marble-floored courthouse, she no longer looked like just a mother seeking justice. She looked like a commander marching into battle, flanked by Monica Bell on one side and Jordan Wells on the other. Selena had become the symbol of a storm that had outgrown its origin. What started as a cry for her daughter had become a movement, and now it was stepping straight into the eye of power, outside. The courthouse steps were packed, protesters with signs, journalists with cameras, survivors with stories. Banners rippled in the wind, each one painted with names Arielle, Imani, Malik, Jeremiah, dozens of them kids who had once walked to school like Arielle had, only to be met with the blunt end of a system too corrupt to see them as children. The case had grown far beyond what any city official had predicted. Monica Bell had filed a federal class action suit against the 12th Precinct, the Chicago Police Department, and specific officers named in over 150 accounts of racial profiling, excessive force, and unlawful surveillance. The filing was more than 800 pages, backed by witness statements, internal audio leaks, altered medical records, and a documented pattern of misconduct reaching back 7 years. It named names: Chief Grant Lattimore, Officer Marcus Haynes, Sergeant Ronald Deeks, Lieutenant Sandra Corbin. And it didn't stop there. Selena's team had subpoenaed private email servers, union communications, even internal briefing memos marked confidential. What they found painted a portrait of deliberate escalation and targeted harassment. Quotas masked as performance reviews. Clear the block patrols coordinated ahead of community events. Even reward programs where officers with the most arrests in designated hot zones were offered bonuses and vacation time. It wasn't just brutality, it was policy. Inside the courtroom, the silence was thick with tension. Rows of press badges lined the back. Behind them sat Arielle, finally out of the ICU, her curls wrapped in a scarf, her left arm still in a sling. She sat with quiet strength, flanked by teachers, students, musicians, people who had seen her not as a case number, but as a girl who once taught kids to read music on Saturdays. Selena took the stand first. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. She spoke like a woman with nothing left to lose and everything left to fight for. "My daughter didn't fall," she said. "She was struck, repeatedly, by men in uniform who saw her as a threat because she was black and walking near a school. And when they realized they were being recorded, they tried to erase what happened. They altered medical records. They watched my house. They sent me threats." She paused. "But what they didn't count on was this: I used to track enemies for a living. I built systems that found lies in silence. And I found theirs. She handed the prosecutor a flash drive. This is every redacted file they tried to hide. Every whispered order. Every digital fingerprint they thought they wiped. I kept receipts when she stepped down. The room was frozen. Even the defense attorneys avoided eye contact. Then it was Officer Jordan Wells' turn. He stood with shoulders squared, but his voice cracked more than once. He admitted his complicity, his silence. But most of all, he detailed how the department pushed for performance. They told us to be visible in certain areas. That meant pull over more kids, check more backpacks, write more citations even if they weren't doing anything. We called them ghost charges. Enough to detain, but not enough to hold. He looked at Chief Lattimore directly. You signed off on it. The courtroom buzzed like a hornet's nest. Next came evidence from Monica Bell, a whistleblower affidavit from a retired precinct clerk, revealing how misconduct reports were routinely rerouted, flagged as unfounded before reaching command. A breakdown of over $12 million in taxpayer-funded settlements, none of which were made public. And the most damning piece, a recovered audio message from Officer Haynes. Laughing as he said, "Let's make sure that violin girl doesn't wake up." Gasps rippled through the room. Arielle flinched, but didn't cry. The prosecution turned its focus on Chief Lattimore next. Under oath, he tried to feign ignorance. I was unaware of many of these isolated incidents, he said. Monica stood, isolated. Then why are there over 150 of them, same district, same tactics, same officers? Lattimore looked down. Officer Haynes wasn't so quiet. His defense was arrogant, defiant. These streets aren't safe, he said. Sometimes force is necessary. But she was 16, Monica snapped, and unarmed, and compliant. She moved fast. Haynes muttered. She was carrying a violin. Selena said, standing again, not a weapon. A violin. The room fell silent. The judge, a black woman in her late 50s named Honorable Darlene McKay, watched it all with razor focus. She had built her career on civil rights litigation, and now she was watching history unfold from the bench. She spoke only once that day, after a motion by the defense to dismiss the most serious charges. She looked over her glasses and said, "This court is not in the business of protecting institutions over people." That motion is denied. Outside, the crowd erupted. Selena exited the building to chants. The steps were a sea of people. They weren't angry now, they were alive. They had seen the cracks in the system widen into fractures, and they were pushing, shoving, clawing to make them split. The revolution had left the courtroom. It had taken to the streets. Local politicians called for emergency oversight. The governor's office requested a federal review. Students across the state walked out of class. Educators held rallies. Even retired officers began to step forward. The system had always claimed to be untouchable. But now it bled. And Selena wasn't done. At the press podium, she stood with Arielle's violin repaired, gleaming in the light. This, she said, holding it up, was treated like a threat. My daughter was treated like an enemy. But we are not enemies. We are citizens. We are families. We are the truth they tried to silence. And we're not going anywhere. The crowd roared. And somewhere inside, behind cold courtroom walls, Chief Lattimore knew his empire had started to fall. It was just past 6 in the morning when Selena Thompson heard the softest sound she'd been waiting for, praying for ever since her world split open. A whisper, barely more than breath. But to her, it was thunder. She turned from her place in the corner of the hospital room, where she had sat every night since the trial began, and saw Arielle, her daughter, her heart, her reason blinking slowly, lips parting again with that same broken sound. Mom. Selena didn't cry. She exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks, maybe longer. She moved to the bed, dropped to her knees, and gently took Arielle's hand. The monitors beeped softly around them, a rhythm that now sounded less like a warning and more like music. Arielle's fingers were cold, trembling, but alive, lucid. "You're okay," Selena whispered, brushing curls from her daughter's forehead. "You're here." Arielle didn't say anything at first. Her eyes roamed the ceiling, the IV lines, the bandages, the shadows in the corners. Then she asked. Her voice cracked from disuse. "Did they say sorry?" Selena's jaw clenched gently. "No," she said, "but the world did. Within 2 days. Arielle's name was on every screen in the country, not as a hashtag, not as a symbol, but as a person. At a televised youth rally held in Grant Park, organized by local high schoolers, teachers, and artists, Arielle appeared, wheelchair-bound but radiant, in a soft lavender scarf, her violin across her lap like a banner of survival. The crowd, over 15,000 strong, went silent when she rolled up to the podium. She adjusted the mic herself. "My name is Arielle Thompson," she said, voice still raspy but clear. "I'm 16. I play music. I study hard. I like caramel popcorn and horror movies. And I was almost taken from all of that because someone thought I looked dangerous." The silence deepened. "I wasn't. I was just walking." She paused, then looked into the camera. "But I am dangerous now to every lie they ever told to keep people like me afraid. I'm not afraid anymore. And neither should you be." The applause could be heard from rooftops. That moment wasn't just a recovery, it was a declaration. And Selena. She wasted no time. With Monica Bell and Darius Knox by her side, she officially launched the Thompson Foundation for Accountability and Reform, or TFFAR, a civilian-led watchdog coalition designed to hold police departments accountable through data transparency, legal aid, whistleblower protection, and public education. The headquarters was built in a converted firehouse on the south side, outfitted with secure tech, community space, and a 24-hour hotline. Within its first month, it had fielded over 2,000 submissions from across the country. But the ripple effect didn't stop there. Thanks to the legal pressure and the public outcry, the Chicago Police Department underwent a full federal restructuring. Dozens of officers were removed from duty. Civilian review boards were granted full investigative power. Internal Affairs was placed under Department of Justice supervision. And, for the first time in city history, officers with sustained misconduct reports were required by law to be named publicly. But the most lasting legacy came from Capitol Hill. Arielle's Act, introduced just 2 months after the verdict, passed the House with overwhelming support. The new law required independent investigations of police incidents involving minors, a national database for police disciplinary records, federal funding for community-based safety alternatives, mandatory body cam footage release within 72 hours of use-of-force incidents. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Real, codified, enforceable progress. And at the bill's signing ceremony, Selena stood at the steps of the Capitol beside Arielle, both of them dressed in white. "We didn't ask for this," Selina said. "But we answered it." She paused, then smiled at her daughter. Every law written in her name is a promise to every child who walks the streets just wanting to go home. Back in Chicago, the city that once tried to silence them now carried their story in murals, in school lessons, in policy. Selina didn't return to the school district. She ran for city council, and won. She didn't run on vengeance. She didn't promise fire. She promised eyes, watchful ones, relentless ones, honest ones. She vowed to never let what happened to Arielle happen to another child again, not under her watch. On her first day in office, she gave a speech in front of City Hall. Hundreds gathered on the steps. Her voice carried across the square like a bell. "I know what some of you are thinking," she said, "that this is the end of the story, that justice has been served. But I didn't come here today to write a closing chapter. I came to build a blueprint." She held up a copy of Arielle's act. "This isn't justice finished. It's justice beginning." The crowd erupted, and behind her, Arielle stood tall now, recovered, her fingers flexing lightly around the violin at her side. She didn't need to play that day. Her presence was its own music, a symphony of resistance, of survival, of change. Selina looked out at the sea of faces, young, old, black, brown, white, broken, healing, and she knew this was no longer her fight alone. It belonged to all of them now. And justice had a new blueprint. What happened to Arielle Thompson and what her mother, Selina, did in response teaches us something every American needs to hear: justice is not given. It's demanded. This story wasn't just about one girl or one precinct. It was about a broken system, wrapped in silence and protected by fear, finally being forced to answer for its actions. From the moment Arielle was attacked on a sidewalk for simply walking home, to the day her voice echoed across the nation, this became a blueprint for every citizen who's ever wondered if their voice matters. It does. Selina didn't wait for permission. She didn't ask for pity. She moved. She built alliances. She exposed lies. She protected her daughter and, in doing so, protected thousands more. Her courage birthed Arielle's act, launched a civilian-led watchdog foundation, and restructured a city's police force from the ground up. That didn't happen because the system allowed it. It happened because people demanded it. Because truth found a way to speak louder than fear. And if you're watching this, know this: the next change begins with you. This story is more than content. It's a call to action. Ask questions. Hold leaders accountable. Protect each other. Remember, Arielle was 16. One girl, one voice. And she changed everything. Imagine what 10, 100, or 1,000,000 voices can do. So don't just watch, act. Subscribe to this channel right now. Click that like button to amplify the message. Share this video with 5 people in your circle: friends, teachers, parents, neighbors, because awareness is the first step toward action. In a world flooded with noise, stories like this remind us that the truth still roars. And if we keep listening, if we keep speaking, change won't just be possible. It'll be inevitable. You've seen the proof. You've felt the impact. Now help carry it forward. Because justice doesn't whisper, it roars. And together, we make it echo across this nation. Subscribe, like, share right now.